Now, the Deputy Chair of the London Assembly, Andrew Boff, long-time member of that august institution, joins me in this studio. Andrew, leaving the European Union was a terribly difficult issue for the Conservative Party to get to grips with. An argument, it took a very long time for the party to come to terms with the fact the party had voted to leave. This issue of ECHR is even more difficult, isn't it?
I don't think so, because it's not the same thing, as you pointed out. The ECHR has got nothing to do with the EU at all.
Well, it does actually, indirectly.
No.
Well, I could, as an MEP,
yeah.
I could walk from the European Parliament straight into the European Court of Human Rights through a corridor.
Yeah, that's because our restaurant was better in the Strasbourg.
Well, that may be arguable.
But no, there's no link between them apart from the fact that they're in the same city.
Well, the link's very clear. You can't be an EU member without being an ECHR member.
The chances. You can't be an EU member.
You cannot be an EU member
but
without being a signatory.
You know, leavers like ourselves were looking forward to a time when we could leave the EU and fully take up our international responsibilities, fully take up our sovereignty with regards to how we trade and who we deal with in the world. And that's been the Brexit benefit. The ECHR is a completely different body. It was, as you so rightly said, it was forged in the wreckage of a Europe ripped apart by a war. And they put that court together because small as they started off as, and in the end that ended up as being people herded onto cattle trucks to concentration camps. And I'm very aware of Godwin's law, but this actually is what it's about.
You and I totally understand where this court comes from, and I understand why it was set up, and I get why Churchill and British lawyers were behind doing it. I get all of that. But with respect to that argument, that was 75 years ago. We are now living in a very different world. You yourself talked about...
Well, we aren't, are we, Nigel? We aren't living in a different world. We're still getting situations, you know, we've still had horrible situations in Europe where the equivalent of Holocaust have been taken place, or the equivalent of ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, in the ex-Yugoslavia. These all happened.
30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago, those horrible things did happen.
History is... If you don't learn from history, if you say it will never happen again because it was in the past, then you're instantly condemning yourself to recreate those problems.
This country... Hang on. You said yourself a moment ago that the point about Brexit was to get benefits, right? And you know as well as I do, one of the main reasons for Brexit was getting back control of our borders. Now, when an elected government with an 80-seat majority proposes... proposes sending people to Rwanda, and an unnamed judge, probably without legal training in Strasbourg at 10 p.m. at night, stops that flight going. That is not the sovereignty.
It's unlikely that without legal training.
That is not the sovereignty you and I voted for.
That's unlikely. It's not without legal training. You know that the judges in the European Court for Human Rights are qualified judges. Not so much in the European Court of Justice, which we now can say goodbye to.
Many of the ECHR judges are jurists, not judges. But that's a technical point. I want to do the big picture with you. The big picture is we voted Brexit. You were a Brexiteer. The Conservative Party, in the end, got it, won a big majority of it. If we cannot control our borders, because judges in the ECHR...
Absolutely, we should control our borders, and we need to put in laws that can do that. Well, we can put in place laws that do that. And if you cite that example of that particular person who was told that they couldn't go to Rwanda, that wasn't because they said the policy was wrong. It was because that person hadn't had the rights for a legal process, for a legal process that's been established in this British...
Why should anybody...
Established in our British Constitution since Magna Carta. Why should we abandon that?
Why should anybody that crosses the Channel by dinghy illegally have any legal rights?
Well, one of the things Well, first of all, genuine asylum seekers have a right to come in.
We let in huge numbers of asylum seekers in the last 2 years.
Less,
we've let them in from Ukraine. We've let them in from
virtually any other country in Europe.
No. We've allowed them in from Hong Kong, from Ukraine, Afghanistan.
These were all decisions of the United Kingdom government, and as I remember, that had a considerable support amongst the British people, because they didn't want people who had been supportive of us to be effectively told you're going to have to languish under a regime that's going.
What they don't want are unnamed young men who throw their passports into the English Channel, who could come from any background.
There are a load of legal redresses to this. The only time...
Name one.
Well, there are a load of things that the government can do to make sure that those borders are the best controlled in Europe. But they rather than choosing to do that, rather than do the difficult job of making sure we have legislation in place that can do that, what they do is they cry foul, blame someone else. And European Convention on Human Rights. There is an absolute right under the European Convention for countries to determine who and who should not be in their country. But it has to have a legislative framework.
When somebody comes before a judge in this country, they claim Article 8 of the ECHR of a right to a family life, but deportation doesn't.
They don't. That's a small minority. And if you actually look at the number of cases that have gone to Strasbourg, of the 250 that were sent last year, vast majority of those were ruled out of order. Only 4 went to legal redress, and 2 of those were thrown out.
So why are we not deporting more people?
Because the problem we've got is that the government has recognised that the processing of people as they come into this country needs to be improved. And it's been underfunded.
Well, the processing, frankly...
They know that that's the case.
Virtually every person who claims to be Afghan is now being allowed to stay. That's how the process is. But
that's not the case.
But let's move on.
That's not the case.
Let's move on. You and I,
large number,
Andrew...
No, I'm not letting you get away with that, Nigel.
It's true.
No, it's not.
They're on TikTok every day.
Because in a large quantity of those cases, those people are told they can't be in this country. They have no valid claim for asylum.
And then they're not deporting.
And then they were deporting them. The fact that they're not being deported...
Not deporting them.
The fact that they're not deporting them is an administrative problem. It's not a legal one. And the ECHR wouldn't get involved in that.
In my view, was a part of that. But, return to the point. When Rishi Sunak says the Conservative Party could put in its next manifesto leaving the ECHR, you'd be root and branch opposed to that.
Absolutely 100%. I do not want to join a club that only Belarus and Russia are currently members of. OK, Andrew Boff. Thank you very much. Well, Andrew, you see, believes in that very, very strongly. I disagree with him, but we have civilised debate. But please, folks at home, don't take Rishi Sunak seriously when he talks about leaving ECHR. Mr. Boff and other senior members of the Conservative Party won't wash it. It won't wear. It isn't going to happen. It'll be about as truthful as the last manifestos telling you they'd reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. The Conservative Party have no desire to do any of this.